To many, the days that we are in are dark indeed. Those who see them as the darkness that it is also see what causes the darkness, and in many cases, what lies behind the darkness. The darkness is what has blinded the minds of the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations. So, when you look at the world that you are in, for those that are in the elite, that are at the top of the heap, so to speak, these are the greatest times. There's nothing that they're prevented from doing. They have the money, right? The wealth, the power, the influence. They are doing everything that they desire in the temporary. Yet, they will never be able to change the fact that this is still temporary. So, what I'd like you to consider is why it is that so many of those in the elite that have the most and have gained the most benefit from our system, from our government, from our nation and its bounty, are so enamored by the creation of the CCP, so enamored by the China that rose up because of their help, their complicity, their complacency, their own avarice and hubris. So let's talk about why that is. Why is it that you have been for years being marketed to the rise, the inevitable rise even, of China? Well, it really boils down to one simple fact, and everything else flows from there. Money. Greed. You see, China has always been the temptation, the trap. It has always been the lure. But it always comes with a cost. So, I'm often asked, why do you hate China so much? Well, I don't hate Chinese people. Why would I? What I despise, and I'm not going to try to whitewash it, is the CCP and their utter inversion of reality that they have spun since their existence 100 years ago was birthed. I see them not only as an adversary, but as an enemy to truth and love and justice and mercy and humility. I see them as having corrupted not only their own people, but the entirety of the world. Not that the pre-existing conditions weren't already in place and the vulnerabilities in human nature to take advantage of. But you see, what you guys don't realize is that everything that's been happening for many, many years is a gigantic test. A test to see who and what you serve. A test to see what you will do in crisis. Who you will actually look out for. What you actually believe in. What you have set your lives upon. For good or evil. You see, you live in a world that is much deeper than what the surface appearances can give you. You've heard me talk about this over and over, the concept of the metasphere and being in a meta war. You've heard me talk about the reality of the spiritual reality that overarches all of this. That the temporal reality that you can perceive with your five senses and mind alone is just the surface of the actual reality that you are in. And the world and its systems function in that thin layer. And are subject to the meta war that is overarching all of them, regardless of where the people, places, tribes, tongues, and nations exist on the planet. So what I'm trying to tell you is that here and now, you're in a greater conflict that you do not comprehend, do not see, do not acknowledge. And it's bigger than nation states. It's a war between two seeds. It's a war between truth and lies. You are in a bigger reality. There is a larger thing going on beyond what you perceive in the temporal. Now, ask yourself why it is that it's like you've woken up in a world that is like locked in a Twilight Zone episode. Why do you suppose that is? What do you think caused it, and what do you think is happening? You're in a war. In a war, there are but three kinds of people: soldiers, prisoners, and casualties. That's the reality that you're in. And when you look at that in terms of what has been occurring with China and how they have been playing you for over 50 years, it should be readily apparent now what they really are and what those that serve them, that are allied with them, that are apologists for them, what they are as well. They are liars. They are deceivers. They're the deceived. They're the corrupted. And I'm not saying that because they have a problem with things in the United States or any other nation. What I'm saying is this is bigger than nation states. And until you realize that, You will not understand where you are in history and what time it is. You will walk around with giant question marks, always following you and stalking you. You are immersed in information, in signals, in symbols, in narratives. You are walking around in an environment that is much deeper than the surface appearances. You're walking around in a world that is much more complex, yet much more simple at the same time than what you can truly understand. So, when you look at how things are done in this world and how the systems work, remember I've used the terminology domination system. The systems are dominating because they're corrupted. There's a spiritual reality, a meta reality attached to all of those nations. All of the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations. You are immersed in it. Whether you perceive it, acknowledge it, or even are willing to investigate the validity of what I'm telling you. It's amazing how many people deny any kind of reality of spirituality, right? Spiritual context. Yet there's so much that they put their faith in, right? That they cannot see, touch, hear, nor test with anything in this world. Yet they project on those that do have beliefs in other realities, right? They think that they are more evolved than they are, and they look at them as holding back progress, being a threat to their way of life. It never stops to cross their mind that quite possibly their way of life might actually be self-destructive and a lie. After all, if they are deceived, how would they know it? So basically what they do is they project onto others in a inversion, right? Kind of like a mirror image. That's because they are living in the photographic negative of reality. So when you look at the world around you and what is happening in it, all of it has a deeper context. And see, there is a war going on between those that are seeking to enslave you at every level and keep you enslaved, and those that are trying to fight against those dark powers. You're in a great narrative, an epic. And that includes all the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations. Now, what does this have to do with China? Well, the CCP is a completely false construct. It is an amalgamation of appropriated concepts and ideas almost completely foreign to their culture, except for what they appropriated wrongly from within the culture and wrapped themselves up with to deceive the Chinese people. They are essentially a rerun of the Han Dynasty and communist methodologies and symbiologies. Yet they're even a corruption of that. They are a corruption of everything that they've touched. But they're cunning. They're so cunning that they deceived your own leadership for 50 years. Now, your leadership wanted to be deceived because of their own corruption and vulnerabilities to it. I'm not saying they were cognitively aware of that fact, but they wanted to believe what they wanted to believe, despite all the facts to the contrary, which is why we are in the spot that we are in. So, how do you like it? Are you asking enough questions now about reality? Are you willing to look beyond what it is that you've been taught, you've been told? Are you willing to look deeper? Do you care more about seeking the truth than being right? Do you care more about the truth than you do about fitting in to an artificial construct? Or do you care more about your reputations, how you appear to others, and salving your conscience, knowing that you're doing so and being completely fake? Would you rather virtue signal or actually live a virtuous life? You know, I hear the narratives constantly. I can tell you one thing, the far left has amazed me in one respect. They're even more fearful than the far right. And they're also completely upside down. You see, the binary simulacrum are mirrors of themselves in the extremes. So what I'm trying to tell you is that there's a battle between them, and they are proxies that are going to lose because they are being used to wage war against everybody else. Now, I'm also going to tell you that when it comes to the United States of America, as much as I love our people, I refuse to live in a mirage of what was, in a system that has corrupted itself, hoard out its people, abused them, and lived a lie. I will not do that, and I will not accept it. Now, if you choose to, that is your choice. To those who are Christians, people of faith, you need to evaluate what you believe. And you need to ask yourselves, did God establish an eternal republic for you? Or something much different? To those of you on the other side in super secular land, every single thing that you try to do is a failure. It's been proven a failure over and over again. You never learn the lesson. And together, the confusion on both sides creates a maelstrom, a whirlwind, a storm of testing that will test each and every one of you. It's not about whether you're a secularist or you follow some religious tradition or some man-made manufactured ideology. What it's about is you and your heart and your mind and whether or not you desire truth or not. It comes down to a very simple proposition. Do you prefer counterfeits over your lies? And that includes counterfeits of nation states, counterfeits of leadership, counterfeits of all makes and models that are setting you up for an incredible time of destruction and suffering. You were given a year in the middle of this crisis to evaluate what was good and true and what was most important. Did you take the time to do that in the midst of the crisis? Crisis does one of two things. It either shows you those things because you're willing to see them, or it drives you further away into your own self-destruction. Which path did you take? All of us suffered. And why am I hard on the leadership in this country? Need I go into that? Why am I frustrated with the citizenry? Because you don't give a damn about truth, most of you. You only want to hear what you want to hear, and it has helped to create the conditions that we are all in. Your choices are not in a vacuum. It's one of the reasons why I no longer believe in your system. Although I believe in the ideals of your system and what it was supposed to be. But I'm not willing to live in an echo chamber of something that you've murdered with your complacency and complicity with evil. And one way or another, you'll either move towards the real or you will lose all of this. Just like China is going to lose everything. And you'll join them in that. There comes a time when you have to actually accept responsibility for your choices or accept the consequences that come for not doing so in exponential amplified ways. You were there. Everywhere I look, I see it. Corruption, lies, deception, enslavements, addictions. You cannot claim to be a righteous nation while you are living in the degradation and degeneracy of your own iniquities. And you've elevated evil to virtue and torn down truth and morality and replaced it with your counterfeits. So, is it any wonder that your society is rotting? When you have leaders that you elect that whore you out to hostile powers, what do you think is going to happen? Well, in the end, you always sacrifice your children, your opportunities, and yourselves when you choose a lie. And that's what all of human history is a recycling and rerunning of. You know why it is that everybody looked to China with all their shiny new infrastructure and buildings? Because they lost faith in you. Because you sold out to a lie. You chose a lie. And those that are fighting to try to keep the country together, and those of us that are trying to work together to right the ship, if we're truly honest with you, the problem isn't the top or the bottom, it's everything here. You cannot continue to do things in fear and confusion and expect anything good to come from the outcomes. You cannot continue to pursue mammon and unbridled pride and greed and think that you will not ultimately have to pay the price for it with all of your prosperity. You cannot go down the road that you've gone down. And you're forcing on the people in this country and remain divided and stand the test of time, nor the storm which is on the horizon facing you. So, if you have a problem with what I'm saying, well, go look in the mirror, because that's where it began. And I'd never have to say these things if you had actually dealt with your own lives. Furthermore, we wouldn't be having to deal with China or Iran or any other nation state, tribe, or people group that is bent on corruption and destruction of everybody else, had you not chosen a lie. So here we are. And we're going to have to make some hard choices if you want this country to be put back together again. And you're going to have to make some sacrifices, because it's not going to happen the way that you would like. It's not going to be what it was before either. It's pretty clear that your own government is apostate in its own constitutional duties. They don't uphold their oaths. They do not protect the Constitution, nor you. They protect their own personal interests, reputations, and the list goes on. So if you want that mirage, I'm here to tell you, your country will not only fall, it will be wiped from the face of the earth. And you'll have created the conditions for it to justly happen. The same way that China's CCP has created the conditions for them to be completely obliterated when the time comes for having done what they've done. So you've got some choices to make. And if you want to remain in your rebellion and your whoredom, well, I'd start writing my epitaphs now, because you're going to need them pre-written when the day comes and you pay the consequences. Because as it is for people, so too it is for the nations.
I remember what those words say and how they gave me. I remember what you said to me and what it did. All about it. Looking all around me, is going on. Hey, with this world I see. Won't you need now? Won't you need now? I remember what those words say and how they gave all about it. I remember what you said to me and what it did all about it. Looking all around me each day, I see thought about it. I wonder what is going